Well, hello there, my friends, and welcome to the channel. My name is Carpo. I'm a carpenter. I've been a carpenter for around 20 years, on and off, jumping between things, taking another job for a while and coming back to it. But all the while, I've always had a passion for working with natural materials, whether it be metals or wood, glass, if you want to call glass natural. But I enjoy building things. I guess I would be considered by today's standards a maker as much as a carpenter because I just like making things. And it's always been interesting to me how creative people are and how many different amazing things they come up with, how many awesome ideas they have, things that I would never even think about. You know, wooden hinges and intertwined boxes and amazing dovetail joints and joinery. And I have always been the kind of person who wants to put my best foot forward and then share that with people. Say, this is how I did this. So about 10 years ago on my channel, and I had to look this up to be sure I had it right. It was 9 years ago that I uploaded a video, and it was called Kreg Jig Tutorial for Beginners. Now, if you're not a carpenter, a Kreg jig, K-R-E-G, a Kreg jig is Kreg is a brand of tools, and they make they're blue, very distinct color, but they make all different types of, tools and cutting tracks. But one of the things they make is a pocket hole jig, and that's so you can clamp it on and draw pocket holes through various types of wood for building cabinets. Don't want to get into the details because that's not what this video is about, but rather I went back and checked that video. It has about 75,000 views in 9 years, which is like more than most of my other videos because tutorials, of course, and anything informative is going to be something that will attract people who are interested in that specific product. The thing is, when I made the video, I didn't do it for views. I didn't do it for ad revenue. That wasn't even a thing back then. And I didn't do it for any types of sponsorship. I just sat there in front of my table saw and showed people how to use it. Done and done. It was a once-through video, no editing, no bullshit. And I thought about how there's always going to be the one guy, of course, who's like, oh, but you didn't show this and you didn't show that. This isn't a tutorial, there's... The point being that in today's world of the internet, in today's YouTube, woodworking videos and carpentry videos have completely changed. And I'm not here to tell anybody how they should or shouldn't make a video. Of course not. I mean, I understand a lot of guys out there are doing it for the revenue and they're doing it to make cash, and therefore they're going to make them as entertaining and clickbaity as possible. There is a carpenter on YouTube I highly respect named Stumpy Nubs, and he did a video actually a while back, it might have been a couple of years ago, and it was about just that thing, about how there's all these gimmicks now, and it just doesn't feel authentic. A particular channel I like to watch, I'm not going to name, but he's a Portland carpenter, and he makes these amazing resin tables, and I've always loved his channel. But I've seen and noticed this kind of change in attitude over a period of time to where now the video titles are something like, oh my God, I lost $30,000, or I spent $70,000 on this, or $10,000 on that. And I know he's doing it because it's, people go, oh, how can a person waste that much money? Oh, how much did this lumber cost? But I find it, and this is just me, but extremely tacky to talk about money. And I know that there's nothing wrong with giving a layout of the cost and profits made, but to make that like the central theme of the video, it just, to me, just kind of turned me off and I stopped watching that channel. But not only can I make a table worth this much, or look at how much this chair is worth, then there's a whole other side of, look at how cheap I made this. In other words, it's become kind of like, you have to follow some sort of a formula. There's an entire, there's a whole section of YouTube dedicated, well, not section, but if you Google pallet furniture, you will never run out of videos to watch. There are people out there who say, look what I can make out of a pallet. Look what I can make this fine furniture out of a pallet. And these are all great things, people, but it becomes overplayed. It's like all of a sudden 20 videos or 20 different channels are making a video on using pallet wood to build some fine furniture. Meanwhile, missing the whole freaking point. See, a lot of these guys, they say, well, look, you don't have to buy money and buy all this expensive wood. Just get some pallets off the side of the road. And here, let me show you how to turn them into a fancy table with $20,000 worth of tools. Now look, as a carpenter, I have a lot of tools. A lot of tools. And I've bought most of them used. I've done everything I can to try to get all the basic tools that I need, as well as, funky router bits I might only use once or twice. But a lot of these channels end up getting inundated with free tools that are sent to them by the companies, or they have enough of an overhead to buy things that they might not use very often. And I feel like this is really overlooked. And the reason why I'm concerned, or why this is even a theme in this video, is because there are so many people out there who really want to learn how to work with wood and tools and build things on their own. And there is a desperate need for that. There are so many people out there who have the potential to be amazing carpenters or makers, but just don't have the courage or believe that they can get it done. Like, oh, I can't afford a saw that expensive. Now, there are some channels who focus on I make this clear, there are lots of great YouTube channels on carpentry. And the ones I like the most are the ones who say, this is how you could build this, but this is how you also could build this. Now, a lot cheaper, right? Now I look at things rationally here. Every single piece of furniture that you see that's from, a century or older, every single piece of furniture was made by hand. Everything that you see that's made from wood was done by hand. Cross-cut saws and, hand planes. It can be done without fancy tools. However, it is very time consuming. And in our modern society, a lot of people just want things to be done quickly. They don't have the patience. And we have a desperate need for new carpenters and new builders coming because people aren't getting into the trades anymore. So I think it's even more important to share kind of, down to earth discussions about how to make something. And I know that's not what every channel's about, because there's a theme that it runs through all of these channels, which is, here's today's sponsor. You can buy these tools through this place, through our, affiliate link. And you're asking yourself, well, is this really the best tool? Or is it just because this person's getting a cut of this tool? Knowing what I know now about carpentry is there are many different tools to get one job done. Sometimes you can router an edge by hand. There are so many different things that you can do. If you don't have a planer, there's other ways. You can use a router to plane a big board. And there are a lot of great tutorials on how to do these things, and I commend that. But I feel like over the last 5 years, so many of the carpentry channels that were great have lost themselves in editing. It's like every single time they show a little clip of what they're doing, and then it's a cutaway to an irrelevant movie that has some funny little clip. And look, I get it. Humor's important. But it's like dressing something up to the point where you're not getting as much information. And I compare this to some of the videos I've watched on totally different topics, where a person's speaking very slow and there's a lot of pictures and they tend to repeat themselves. And after you get done watching a half-hour long video, you think, I could condense everything that was said into like 30 seconds. And you realize the rest was just filler. And I feel like that's what's happened to a lot of the building channels. It's, here's what I started with. Here's a few clips of me on the saw. And by the way, here's the affiliate links. And, if you're a carpenter and you want to share your carpentry, I think that's great. But when I heard somebody say, well, I'm a carpenter and I have this channel, and basically saying, my goal is to do this full time. And my thought was, what is this? You're a carpenter. If you're going to do carpentry, do carpentry. I mean, sure, you can still film, but it's not, you have to have, if you have a passion for carpentry, then do the carpentry. And I think that that's one of the difficult things. I have a passion for photography and video making. I also have a passion for carpentry. There's nothing more frustrating, I guess, than setting up a camera at different angles and trying to get close-ups and time-lapse and then edit all that together. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there are some great videos out there that are well edited, but it's there these themes of how expensive can I make it, how cheap can I make it, and then there's, you know, videos dedicated to just the strongest joints, and then somebody else who makes another one that says, no, that one's wrong, this is actually, and those are great because you're getting to the bottom. Do dowels hold things better? Biscuits? If you're not a carpenter, you're going to be like, whatever, what's a biscuit? But a biscuit is like, biscuits and dominoes are like these pieces of wood that you slide in to hold two flat pieces together to keep them from moving while you're gluing them up. But at any rate, then we have the purists, and this I'm only going to briefly touch on. I've seen purists in every hobby, in everything I've done in my life. There's purists that won't even smoke pot with a lighter because they don't want butane, or won't smoke out of a wood pipe, that kind of stuff. All the way up to the carpenters who wouldn't dare use that type of a level, or wouldn't dare use that kind of a saw. They've become too good for cheap tools, but it comes across as very, shallow and ignorant to most people who can't afford those things. And but there are plenty of people out there who can, and a lot of people pride themselves on their tools, and that's understandable. Look, I started building guitars about a year ago. There's so much involved in that, and there's so much I didn't know. But when I finally built a successful guitar, I thought, wow, one thing I've learned here is that there are 10 different ways to do every aspect of building a guitar. But to me, it's always about how does it sound, and then mostly, what kind of music can you play with it? And I compare this because in the music world, it's the same exact thing. There's people who brag about their $50,000 guitars and, you know, how much money they spent on their strings or whatever. And you're like, but let's hear the song, right? And it's the same thing talking about tools all day, I guess. So to get this, finalized here, I'm kind of stumbling on my words because it's hard to define. There's a lot going on in my brain that I can't really translate. But you don't need expensive tools to do good carpentry. Just like you don't need an expensive guitar to play good music. You just have to have the skills, and those skills have to be developed. And if we're spending all our time, messing with different products and not really getting in and building something, then all we're doing is just, looking at the products, I guess. You don't need expensive tools, and another note, and important, you don't need expensive wood. You can use any kind of wood. I've seen people build amazing tables out of 2x4s. It's all in how you use it and what you know about it. So a lot of people make the mistake when they first get into carpentry, going out and they'll buy the fanciest wood that they can and they want to work with. No, start out with cheap stuff. Learn how to work with it and then move forward. And the same with tools. There's nothing wrong with expensive tools. In fact, they're phenomenal. A lot of people have a full Festool setup, which is a very expensive brand that I have nothing of. I would love to have a Festool, but I'm not going to go out and buy it because I don't need it. The idea is you buy a cheaper tool in that line, you see how much you use it, and if you tend to use it a lot, or the one you have breaks, then you can buy a better one. But you won't know what you need until you've actually purchased and tried the actual product. And a lot of people go all in on that. So you don't need expensive tools, you don't need expensive wood. There are many different methods to build everything, and power tools are relatively new. So if all you have is hand tools, you can make that work too. And so that's just kind of my blah, blah, blah. And my ramble and rant about YouTube channels and how tutorials have changed. And feel free to add your thoughts in the comments, and I'll talk to you all next time. Peace.